welcome back to DPAF. My name is Jessica and I'm joined today by David Pattinson to discuss work and lifestyle opportunities abroad for British youth during lockdown. Hi David, how are you?
Hi, how's it going? It's good to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you too. So why are you encouraging British young people to consider opportunities abroad?
Well, I've been thinking about this for a long time, Jessica. I mean, during this lockdown, I've been speaking out against it, and I've been, against compulsory lockdown. I got no problem with people locking themselves down or doing whatever they want to do in their own best interests. But it's the coercive nature of it. It violates British civil liberties, in my view. Now, also during this past year, what I've also learned about is how other countries are responding to the coronavirus that's different to our country. Other countries have done, much less. They've kind of, carried on as normal, or they've put in really minor restrictions, or they've sort of shielded, elderly people or whatever. And I'm kind of looking at this from the point of view of British youth, British young people. I mean, if the virus only affects people aged 83 and over primarily, the risk to life for young people in their 20s or their 30s is pretty much minuscule. And there's all this lost economic opportunity and lost life opportunity with people being locked down, which is not in their best interests, in my view. So my solution to that problem is to start looking at these other countries. I mean, I've moved out of Britain over to the United States. I mean, the USA's got no shortage of problems, but in Florida, where I am, you could live a normal life. I mean, I'm here, I've got my sunglasses, I've got my shorts, I've got the convertible, I'm able to live my life, which in my opinion is preferable for me than being locked down in Great Britain. What other people do is up to them, but I want to speak to young British people and say, look, there's some other opportunities out there worth considering. You can always go back to Britain anytime. You can, you can do what you want to do. But if you do not like being locked down, there's other opportunities open for you and to you that I want to discuss.
So how old are the British youth? Should other age groups consider leaving the country as well?
Well, I think it's totally up to each individual. I mean, I think this crisis discriminates against young people far more egregiously than any other age group. They're the least likely to become ill. They're the most fit and capable, fit anyway, just because of the youth. Young people that are fit and strong and healthy, by nature. And then also all the debt that's been dumped on young people to pay for older people. The government says, don't worry, young people can grow up and spend the rest of their life paying for all this furlough and all this lost economic opportunity that we're going to benefit from today. Whereas older people, obviously, they're retired, their life expectancy is less, just because they're older. They won't have to pay the bills. We're not going around telling older people to give up their pensions or sell their houses or sell their cars to pay for the cost today. We're saying younger people, don't worry, they'll spend the next 20, 30, 40 years paying for this, when young people may not want to do that. Why can't they have the same economic opportunities as the older people had, in the 1960s and the 1970s and the 1980s? So younger people looking at this, of any age, but particularly probably in their 20s and their 30s, they can be looking ahead the next 10 years, 20 years and saying, I don't need all this debt. I don't need fewer job opportunities, lower quality of living in Britain when I can go and enjoy higher quality of life, lower cost of living in other countries, because those countries have far less debt than Great Britain does.
So to what extent are lockdown conditions different in other countries?
There's a lot of every country has pretty much got their own different, conditions and rules. Some are very, very limited. You look at a country like Belarus, where I've been to, hardly any restrictions whatsoever. Sweden has been sort of famously in the news as no lockdown. They have put some restrictions from the month of December. Sort of groups of 8 is sort of the max, and no alcohol after 8 p.m. or whatever. But that's about it. Everyone can go to work. Everyone can go on a night out. out. Britain is kind of one of the most severe countries, on earth, and I think it's totally counterproductive. There's no evidence from my point of view that we're saving a ton of lives. The news talks about lives lost, but they don't talk about lives saved. We're not doing a lockdown to lose lives. Theoretically, we're doing it to save lives. But underlying all this is a huge debt wave coming at Great Britain at sort of hurtling speed. This was in evidence before the lockdown. I mean, we were 2 trillion in debt before the lockdown. We're going up to 4 trillion in debt now. This burden is going to fall on young people disproportionately. And if you're someone that says to themselves, I don't need this, let's start looking at some other countries. And I'm happy to give some examples for you. I mean, there's lots of low debt countries out there that have kind of been off the radar but are looking to import talented Western people into their countries. You can get a visa, you can get citizenship, you can get residency, you can get easy employment. Cost of living is low, tax is low, quality of life is high, and I think that this is something to young people should consider. And I think from Britain's point of view, it would actually benefit Britain. If there's a mass exodus of young people out of the country, the government's going to have to address that. They're going to have to say, maybe we should treat our young people better to retain them rather than taking them for granted so that they bail out.
Does the news media cover lockdown conditions in other countries properly?
Well, this is really interesting because I remember, you might be a bit young for this, but I remember the war on terror back in the early 2000s, and the media back then, were really good at being out all across the Middle East and all across the world, reporting from all these sort of war zones, telling people what was going on the ground, and they were always reporting from Baghdad or Damascus or Mosul or Kabul and all these kind of far off places. But of course, during the pandemic of 2020, another worldwide event, the British media haven't gone to any other countries to report on what's going on. It's almost been a news blackout from other countries because I think it undermines the British lockdown. If other countries are living sort of free lives, relatively speaking, but Britain is not, the British people say, well, why are we disproportionately treated? And I think that the media have done a horrible job sort of misleading the people. I contend that the media is pretty much the government now. It's government news, it's government, the agenda on the news. But back in the early 2000s, it was a different ball game. So I'm just comparing the two. But yeah, this story that's been in the news recently, the influencers, the Instagram influencers in Dubai, you might have seen it, and they're getting sort of named and shamed. But, of course, these people are out of the country. They're not spreading the virus in the country. They're not putting any pressure on the NHS. They're doing their influencing gigs. They're sitting out by the pool, having a good time. What's wrong with that? They're out there living their lives. I'm encouraging other people to follow their lead, if they wish to do so. But, of course, if people want to be locked down in Britain, I got no problem with that either. It's just it's letting individuals do what suits them, making their own risk assessment on health. And that's British. That's the British way, in my view. It's every individual doing, what's in their best interests, living a free life, living a British life. It used to be you had to do that in Great Britain. Now you can no longer do that, but you can live a British life in other countries.
So how do you see UK lockdown conditions playing out in 2021 and beyond?
I've been thinking about that a lot, Jessica. When the lockdown first started, this is probably, showing my naivety a little bit. I thought it'd be actually pretty short-lived because I thought the government would quickly come to the conclusion that this crisis was not anywhere near as serious as they'd made it out to be. At the beginning, it was all this, we don't know what we're dealing with here. We got to be risk-averse as possible. And then, as the weeks and months passed, the government, and I think, in league with other Western governments, wanted to take advantage of the crisis and, exploit it for their own benefit. And, it's dragged on and on and on. And, of course, I think there's been sort of surprise on the government about how willingly the British people have cooperated with the lockdown, really, and followed the the requirements and the diktats from Westminster, and sort of almost there's this sort of notion that the British people like enjoy lockdown, all this sort of thing. It's getting paid to sit at home, getting paid to not be productive. But how valuable can the pounds be that you're being paid? It used to be a pound represented labour. Now it represents sitting at home. So how much purchasing power can a pound have where you're paid to sit at home? I would say not very much. It's going to lead to hyperinflation and the complete collapse of the currency, runaway debts, and the consequences of lockdown are going to be like really, really, really bad. And, I'm talking like in the coming years. And so I'm warning young people who may not be interested in those consequences. Other countries won't have them. I mean, if you look at Britain last year, GDP was minus 10%. Sweden, it's like -3. Like -3 is not good, I mean, -3 is bad, but 3 times worse than -3, that's really bad,
Yeah.
I think other countries will recover very, very quickly, as will not. And it's just because Britain was in a bad position before the lockdown. We had a bad debt problem. You don't solve too much debt with more debt. You solve too much debt with less debt. And I think there is a sort of a move in Western governments. There's an expectation there's going to be a collapse of the US dollar. The pound is tied to the dollar as the world's reserve currency, and so the pound by extension is going to be in really bad shape. And I don't like the direction of travel here, and I think people need to make some plans to avoid the impending doom.
Well, thanks so much, David, for your time, and thanks for answering all these questions. And I'm hoping that it will help people who want to know more about how to travel abroad and what their opportunities are, and I think that will help people a lot. So thanks so much for your time and taking time out for me.
No problem, Jessica. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, David.